My name is Caz Latham. I'm a visual artist and illustrator based in Stockport. I primarily work in acrylic on canvas when I'm painting or fine point and felt tip pens when I'm drawing. I'm from the northwest of England. I grew up in Blackpool and Lancaster, but I've spent most of my adult life in Greater Manchester. I've lived in Salford, where I went to uni, in Manchester, and now I'm in Stockport. I've always been creative, but it's manifested itself differently at different points in my life. When I was a little kid, I was always drawing. I used to remember I'd dig out old drawings that I'd done a few months or years prior, and I'd try to go back over them and improve them in some way. I'd also spend hours and hours organising crayons or pencils into whatever pattern I felt was the right one. I don't have any formal art training. I'm basically self-taught. I studied in school up to GCSE. I did art and graphics, but then I stopped doing art. And through college and uni, I studied music instead. And I've got a degree in popular music. My life was all about music after uni for quite a long time, but towards my mid to late 20s, it just gradually started to fizzle out. Now I don't make any music at all. I'm aware this is very strange. A lot of people say it's strange that it was like my whole thing, and now it's just, yeah, don't do it at all. I revisited visual art on a whim one day in 2018, when I was in my early 30s. It just came to me one day, a notion thinking, oh, I wonder if I can still draw a picture. So I just got out the pencil crayons I had and tried and enjoyed it, and it turned out okay. So later that week I bought some stuff for painting, and it wasn't long before friends were asking me to paint stuff for them, and yeah, I haven't stopped since. My background is pretty conventional, working class, I'd say. My family always worked hard and they never seemed to want to splash out money on fancy things, and there was always quite a make do DIY sort of no frills attitude. Blackpool, where I spent my childhood in the 90s, is pretty tacky and brash in a good way, and it's not a pretty place for the most part, but it's got its own sort of charm and there's a lot to love about it. I wonder if this is why my eye is drawn to urban landscape scenes where the imperfections, the plainness and the ugly bits are what I feel makes it. Manchester is also full of these. These scenes, they appear to me like snapshots when I'm walking or driving around or on the train. I'll just see something and just instantly know that's a painting. My partner laughs at me about how much I love Manchester, but it's always where I've felt most at home, even though I wasn't born here. I love locality, the pinpointing and celebrating a sense of place. The more unsung or obscure it is, the better. The road signs and public transport appear a lot in my work. It's bonus points if the road sign's wonky. When I was a little kid, I always had this dream to live in the house on the street that had the road sign attached to it for some reason. Maybe that stayed with me and it pops up in my art. I don't think I take myself too seriously. I'm not averse to a little bit of silliness. I'm quite impulsive as an artist. I think there's a part of me, maybe because I've not had any formal training, that still doesn't feel like I'm a proper artist in inverted commas. Ideas just appear out of nowhere to me that I just absolutely need to follow through with. I think this is what's led to portrait paintings I've done in the past, like mushy peas in extreme close-up, and why some portraits that I do, I just feel they just need to be a floating head. I don't know where that comes from, but yeah, it's just a bit silly, really. My biggest influence, I think, is probably just the world around me. My other favourite subject, apart from urban landscapes, to do is portraits, and they're usually pop culture based, or more recently, people from sport, the world of sport. The faces I paint and draw probably just indicate that I watch too much television. There are a lot of artists whose work I find wonderful, but if I was to start listing influences in that respect, I think I'd probably just end up giving a big list of big hitters that would be on most art fans' lists. So it'd probably be very boring for you listening. I'm also not aware of being consciously influenced by any other artist, or that my art particularly looks, categorically like someone else. I'm sure it does, but it's not something that I'm aware of as such. At the moment, I've got a few commissions on that I'm working on. So I've got a pair of like sports star portraits that I'm working on, and a very special pet. That's a separate one. It's not the same thing. But they're all acrylic on canvas commissions. So I'm sort of working on the 3 right now. The biggest challenge of being an artist for me is, I think probably I'd have to say procrastination. If I get a bit fed up of something that I'm working on, I can leave it untouched for like a whole week or more. And then I end up getting annoyed at myself because I'll never get it finished. So I have to sort of almost force myself back into doing it. It takes way, way longer than it needs to. I'm also quite methodical and ritualistic in the way I work. So I struggle sometimes to get out of my artistic comfort zone. But when I do, I find it very beneficial. I'm pretty chilled out otherwise. I always work on the assumption that absolutely nothing exciting or interesting is ever going to happen with my art. So when it does, it's like a dead nice surprise. The advice I give to my younger self would be to not stop doing art for like 10 years. Why did you do that? I look back now and I'm not sure why I did that, but I imagine what I could have been doing now if I had carried on and not had that break, but there we go. In terms of unconventional mediums or techniques, I've done a fair bit of collage incorporating things such as tram and train tickets, bits of roadmap, and like the other bits from A to Z books, like the lists of road names. I've also made little mosaics with single-use plastic food packaging, washed up, of course, but like things like pot noodle pots and yogurt pots, all washed and cut into little squares, so you've got all the different little colours. I did a nice landscape of Morecambe Prom with that. I've also done, a couple of years ago now, a series of abstract paintings that were expressively painted directly in response to music I was listening to using a limited palette. So there'd be like a painting per song. So this started as a collaboration with my partner, who's a musician, but since I started posting those, I've had a few private commissions for custom ones as well. So each painting is a response to a specific song. So it's quite interesting. When I'm working, I don't tend to have music on, apart from when I do that project, but I don't tend to otherwise. I usually have the telly on, and because I do a lot of my work at the weekend, I'll usually be painting along to the food programmes in the morning, and then football or whatever other sport is on in the afternoon. The best reaction I've ever had to my work, well, I think basically whenever anybody wants to buy it, that's amazing. More so than that, there's some lovely people who've bought several pieces off me, which never ceases to amaze me, and it's astonishing every time, and I'll never be able to thank them enough. So yeah, I think that's the best reaction. What I hope people take away from my work, when I see art that I really like and connect with, I always feel like it's like finding a little bit of yourself, like outside of yourself. Like someone sort of seen into you somehow. So if any of my art ever does anything near like that for anybody, well, that's probably all I could ask for.